So how do you figure out your valuation? Because you had said something about, I think your company's worth 150 million, something like that.
160.
How is that determined?
So initially, before when equity crowdfunding first started, you could just name a valuation, right? And they were like, and then ironically, when I get there, they were like, oh, well, we have some rules now. Now you have to actually find companies that are comparable to your product in the marketplace. And then you can say, okay, since this company raised this capital at this valuation, you may do the same. And so the first thing that I saw is we didn't have audio rooms in Fanbase. But what I first saw was that with 2,500 users, Clubhouse was allowed to raise $10 million at a $100 million valuation off the rip. So I'm like, okay, well, all I need to do is at this time I was raising $1 million at a $20 million valuation. So we were well below what was needed. And at that time, Fanbase had over 10, 15,000 users. So we were straight independent. So without any institutional capital or any crowdfunding capital, we had 10,000 users. We were already generating revenue. No, these apps haven't started. A lot of these apps haven't started to do that yet. So when you think about certain startups that are out here, you also got to think about you're a startup, then you're generating revenue, and then you're profitable. So those are three big differences. And so the fact that we were generating revenue, we had already had a certain number of users, and we were able to compare to other products in the marketplace like Patreon. I use Patreon as an example. I use this other app called Fan House, which ironically, Fan House got venture capital backed. They raised $40 million in a seed round, and they were out of business in 18 months. But they don't look like me. I'm saying this for a reason that, we have to go above and beyond, but they spent that money in 18 months and they were acquired by another company. And that company just went and raised $40 million. And I'm like, it's cool though. I know I already know what I'm up against, but I'm cool with that.
So as you calculate the amount of users, there's a threshold that you had to, because I always hear you talk about $1 billion company.
Mm-hmm.
This is a $1 billion company. What's the threshold as far as users? Because what you said is important. Being profitable and having revenue is important.
Mm-hmm.
So a company, we just saw Reddit go public, right? They haven't been profitable in 19 years.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, when you think about it, wait, 19 years, how they trade, but you have all those things. So what's the threshold of users, revenue that you have to see to say, all right, this is when we reach our $1 billion valuation?
So typically in social media, your valuation is based on total users and then MAU. Because what happened before is, let's say a company like Instagram, that you would scale your company, because all these companies are based on advertising, they would scale it up to enough users where they knew that they could go ahead and then turn on advertising, and then they could try to begin to make the company profitable. Mm-hmm. So that's the old model. The old model was build an app, get a bunch of people on it, and then flip the advertising switch and then start to make money. I didn't want to enter into space that way because I always felt like advertising, what I was experiencing in social media is that advertising was actually limiting the way that people could be visible on social, and people care more about being seen than actually making money. So the fact that advertising limits that, I didn't want to put the limitation of being a company that ran ads. So it changes the way that we're able to value our company, but we still have users. So right now, Fanbase has we about 595,000 users. Right, with no serious major marketing push. Again, I talk about all these things that sound like I'm saying them very calmly, but these are all things that just haven't typically existed ever. So as we continue to scale, my goal, even with this $17 million round, is to scale the company to 1 million users by the end of this year. And having users like you guys on here creating content, like you guys and other people that are joining the platform, are going to help us get there. So that's always also going to increase the valuation. Now, again, tomorrow, if Cardi B come on Fanbase tomorrow, she bring 1 million people, Fanbase is a $1 billion company. It's it works like that. That's really what users increase the value of a social media platform, which is scary because I always talk about so you're telling me that, I say this all the time, so you're telling me I can invest money in Fanbase, then use it, and then increase the value of the asset that I own by simply coming to use it. That's you're literally, it should almost be unfair, because if I was, and I say this before, I don't understand why people don't understand this, is if you're an artist or a musician or an athlete or an entertainer that knows that you can drive people to where you want to be, but you never got a chance to invest in Instagram or TikTok, but you see how powerful those companies are, then fan base is the opportunity for you, no matter what color you are, no matter like your age or whatever. It's an opportunity for you to actually have equity in actually a social media platform. So that's what's really going to increase, like I said, increase our valuations, just how fast we scale users. And it's also the velocity in which it's done. So if it takes me 5 years to get to 1 million users, that ain't good. If it takes me 5 months, that changes everything. It's also the velocity in which you raise, raise your
You said something about marketing and advertising. In the media space, we brought this up about some of the difficulties that transpire when trying to find ad partners, or even having sponsorships or advertising in our media space, but the social media space, especially for fan base. What's that process like for you as far as getting people to come on the app to have advertising?
So, well, we have to be careful about how we do that process, because advertising is something that I don't necessarily want to add to the platform, because we're already in a position that we're generating revenue. The part about advertising is we got to find ways for it to be unique. We have to find ways for it to be kind of cool that don't interrupt the user experience, right? And so, and then advertising, again, is like, it's tough because I was watching the Elon interview the other day, and I could tell like he was blaming the fact that advertisers also, we're leaving X, but it's also like the environment in which you curate for users. The experience is also, advertisers don't want to be on a platform where there's a bunch of hate speech, racism, pornography, and that's kind of like what X is at this point. So it's kind of hard. And he says, oh, well, you can just, you can decide where you want your ads to run, which is two sides of a problem. One, he's admitting that corporations like Facebook can control the visibility that you have in your content. If the advertiser comes on there and says, I don't want any LGBTQ content showing next to my content, then they can turn the LGBTQ down, or they can turn the black down to run their ads, and they can make their money, they can turn it back up. So if you ever see a dip in your engagement on social media, like you'll see this in November. Anybody that talks about politics, your engagement is going to be a flat line around November, because they're going to make sure that you have no effect on being able to influence an election anymore. They can say, okay, you can post something like 0 views, it's going to go down, right? And I see this problem with creators all the time. And so but then he's also admitting that you can pick and choose where your content goes, but you can't necessarily control what the user is going to say. So you can still say, oh, I want my ads to show next to a particular genre. Like I want my ads to show next to people that like sports, which it doesn't mean that somebody's not going to get on there and say something racist or post something foul or whatever, or misleading. So advertising is tricky. That's why I don't like it, because also they control your company. The two things that control your company is either when it's public, the general public, so your stockholders, and your advertisers. If I build a company independent of public stock and advertisers, and I can still generate revenue, then I'm always in control of the way that I want my company to be. Fan base can be as ethically centered as possible without any fail. You know what I mean? We can do the things. If there's things that we want to bring attention to, whatever the cause, whatever the situation is, whatever the time, whatever it is, we can do that, because there's no one that can force our hand to say, we don't want you participating in this, because we control the pockets.